Hi, I'm Caden, here with my brother,
Cal,
and you're watching Eating W's.
eat the W.
That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W.
On today's episode of Eating W's, we have a NFL draft recap and more than anything, a news catch-up. We just kind of got a quick episode for you guys this week. Cal and I have been struggling to get our schedules together, hence why this video is coming out a little bit later on Friday morning instead of our usual Thursday morning. But we wanted to make sure to get an episode out this week and tell you some of our thoughts about the draft. So first of all, our biggest thoughts about the draft is we were there live in person. We were in Kansas City. We weren't way up against the stage or anything, or even like close enough to get the cameras on us, but just to experience that atmosphere and have thousands, hundreds of thousands of fans around you watching this game that they love with you, and the new players coming into it, it was just an amazing experience.
And all the shocked reactions of all the people around you. It was just so like energetic because it was live happening. It was definitely quite the experience.
And trust me, there were shocks left and right. But before we jump into some of those, let's do a quick news rundown to catch up because it's been a minute since we talked about the news. So we're only going to talk about all the biggest stuff, but if you want to see all of the veteran signings and different things like that have been happening, you of course can find them anywhere. Sport Track is one that we really like and use a lot, but NFL.com, ESPN, you can get them anywhere. But here are some of the biggest ones, starting with some re-signings. Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens finally closed the deal on an extension with a 5-year, $260 million extension for Lamar, which if those numbers sound a little familiar, it's because just about a week before that extension happened, Jalen Hurts and the Eagles signed a 5-year, $255 million extension. So Lamar just had to beat him out, didn't he?
Just barely got a little bit over the amount there to name him the top paid athlete now in the NFL.
Interesting. And then also another big time signing for a big man. The Giants re-signed defensive tackle Dexter Lawrence on a 4-year, $90 million deal. So it's good to see those big guys getting paid every once in a while.
And the interesting thing about that is that the pick used to draft Dexter Lawrence was a pick they got in the Odell Beckham trade way back in 2019.
It's interesting.
So, yeah, it's just fun to see, when they'll trace those back, how, where they come from.
Yeah, definitely worked out for them. And then as for signings, we're just going to talk about one right now, and it is the New York Jets signing Randall Cobb, former Packer wide receiver, on a 1-year deal. We wanted to highlight that signing because of the huge trade that happened right before the draft, but of course right after we recorded our last episode a couple weeks ago. The Jets secure quarterback Aaron Rodgers, as well as the 15th overall pick and a 5th round pick in the draft that just most recently happened. And what they send back to Green Bay is the 13th overall pick, a 2nd round pick, and a 6th round pick in the draft that just happened, as well as a conditional 2nd round pick next year, which becomes a 1st round pick if Aaron Rodgers plays 65% of the snaps next season. Or this season, rather. So it's pretty much a 2024 first round pick unless some catastrophe injury happens. So Callan, he's officially gone.
Jordan Love is my quarterback. That's how I have to start this out because that's the truth here. I'm sticking with the Packers. If anyone wondering about that, I'm not going to move with my quarterback like some do. Definitely not going to be a Jets fan this year. I hope they lose. Instead, they become the enemy.
Well, we hope Rodgers plays at least 65% of the snaps, and they lose those snaps.
Yeah, I guess, as long as if he goes and just has a terrible season and just the age catches up to him, and that could happen. That's kind of what Green Bay was banking on by turning to the youth of Jordan Love over the age and experience of Aaron Rodgers, but. I guess, it's the NFL is a business, and that's how it goes. It's a young man's game.
Yeah, it's the 2020 draft, the Packers spend some draft capital to move up and take this guy out of Utah State, who a lot of analysts had falling out of the first round at that point. It was a huge question mark by the Packers from the very beginning, and then you kind of thought, so they're going to trade him now, and then they never did. And then it's 2021, and you're like, they're going to trade him now, and it didn't happen. And then 2022, it's like, Rodgers still a Packer, but now here we are. He's finally not a Packer, and after 4 years now in the league, this will be his 4th year.
Yep.
Jordan Love finally gets his chance. I personally don't think he's ready. I think whether they'd like to admit it or not, a lot of Packers fans don't think he's ready. But I respect the decision. It's the way to go. Stick with your team.
Yeah.
Back Jordan Love, even if he starts out rough. And we'll just see how it goes. You know, some people have these weird starts and then start out terrible and end up having a pretty damn decent career. So.
Yeah, you know, and if we're really bad, we got a good shot at Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah.
So,
and
you know, that would really be a nice kick of the first round wide receiver curse.
Yeah, and we've seen bigger busts in the past, but just watching him play, Marvin Harrison Jr. seems like one of those receivers that it don't matter who's that quarterback. You're going to have a passing attack with that much talent. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. So now to jump into some of our draft reactions, we're each going to, of course, talk about our favorite team, the Vikings and Packers, respectfully. And then we're each going to give you one big takeaway that we had from the first round or whole draft in general. So starting off here, I'm going to jump into the Minnesota Vikings draft class, which included only 6 total picks. Jordan Addison, wide receiver out of USC in the first round, Mekhi Blackmon out of USC in the 3rd round, so a duo there, and then another duo, but from LSU this time, with safety Jay Ward and defensive tackle Ja'Kalen Roy, and then we grabbed a quarterback out of BYU, Jaron Hall, in the 5th round, and finished out our draft with UAB running back Dwayne McBride. So not a ton of players there, but I really do think we have a quality over quantity. Just some of the specific ones to talk about, of course, starting with Jordan Addison. When I first saw this pick, I didn't love it. I'll be completely honest. I wanted Joey Porter Jr., of course. He was still on the board. There was other receivers that we could have gotten in the 2nd, 3rd round that I think would have been just as good. So when we picked Addison, I didn't overly like it, but I watched some film on him, a little more than I had before the draft, and kind of just thought about the way he's going to fit into our offense. And the more I watch it, the more I kind of like it, because he is shifty when he runs his routes. It's so nice. It freezes safeties. It keeps him guessing, and he's fast too. So he has that vertical speed. He's going to take the safeties away from Justin Jefferson, and that's what we need. Justin Jefferson got double covered pretty much the entire year last year and still had a hell of a season, around 1,800 receiving yards. So can you imagine if he's not consistently getting double covered and those safeties have to focus on the other guys in the offense? KJ Osborne taking a stepping up role, Jordan Addison joining the offense, TJ Hawkinson at tight end there. I really like how that offense looks all of a sudden. And then as for his USC teammate that we grabbed in the 3rd round, cornerback Mekhi Blackmon, I really like this pick. Kelee Ringo out of Georgia was still on the board, and I'll still say it. Even now, I wish we would have grabbed Kelee Ringo instead, because we need to get more athletic in that secondary. But Mekhi Blackmon is sticky in man coverage, and that is what we need in this Brian Flores defense. He is very grabby. They got to work on the penalties. I watched some film on him, and I noticed that he is not afraid at all to grab those jerseys of the receivers, which went fine in college and made him lock down in college. But he's going to start getting called for that in the NFL, and it worries me a little bit that if you take that part of his game away because he's getting called for it, all of a sudden he's not near as locked down as he was in college. But I'll be really interested to see how he plays out. And then a final guy I really wanted to specify on here was the 7th round pick, ironically, Dwayne McBride out of UAB. I remember this guy was a beast in, it was either the Senior Bowl, I believe. Yeah, it was the Senior Bowl out of UAB there, University of Alabama, Birmingham, and that's where it's played, right? The Senior Bowl?
I believe so.
It's somewhere down there in Alabama. But I remember they talked a lot about him because he was kind of a hometown guy. He played really well in that game, and I know the Vikings had a couple of meetings with him. lots of uncertainty with Dalvin Cook and how the future is going to play out for him, but I think we got a really good guy in Alexander Mattison. We just extended him not too long ago. So I'm really excited to see the future of this backfield with guys like Mattison, Kene Nwangu, and now Dwayne McBride.
Yeah, and it was a very short draft class. I think one of the shortest in the draft this year. But one thing that I really think that sticks out is that because they didn't take a corner in that first round, they must like what they have in Andrew Booth.
Yep,
Second round.
We got a Caleb E. Evans in the third round out of Mizzou last year, and then Andrew Booth out of Clemson in the second round.
So you doubled up on corners.
And then we got Lewis Seen and Cameron Bynum, who can both actually kind of hybrid corner and play that slot pretty well, if you ask me. So I don't overly love it, but they apparently like it. And like we talked about earlier, back your team. So I think we need to sign a veteran corner right now. You know, guys like Marcus Peters. Rock Ya-Sin just got picked up by the Ravens recently, so not him anymore. But I think we signed one more veteran guy off the free agency market. And then I guess we're just going to roll with it.
Never should have let Pat Pete leave.
I kind of wish we didn't. But, you know, we're going to that heavy man defense. I love Pat Pete. He's just a little too old to play that all-man coverage. He did really well in that zone, and we had to play man every once in a while. But I don't know if I like him playing a sit-in-the-house blitzed man coverage.
Christian Watson beat him. You beat him in that week one.
He didn't catch it, but he certainly beat him.
You beat him.
So now we're going to jump over to the other NFC North team and have Callan talk about the Packers draft class.
Yep, so the Packers had quite a draft haul. They had 13 total picks in this draft. And they moved around a little bit, had a couple of trades, you know, with draft picks, even after the Rodgers trade, but they started off in round one with Iowa edge rusher Lucas Van Ness. And I, you know, really like this pick. You know, he didn't really make sense at first because edge rusher is not a big need, but it did definitely fill some depth. And with Rashawn Gary coming off of an ACL injury, it's definitely a good chance that Van Ness plays early on. And with second round pick, we went with Oregon State tight end Luke Musgrave. And with our second round pick, we went with Michigan State wide receiver Jaden Reed out of Michigan State. And these are two big receiving options for Jordan Love now. I like that they doubled up on the receiving and offensive playmakers. They really need to add some depth to that tight end room, and we add another piece to the wide receiver room with Jaden Reed. And the third round, we did South Dakota State tight end Tucker Kraft, another tight end to go along with Luke Musgrave. And I like that they double dipped here. The two comparisons for Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft were Travis Kelce. So think if we could get two Travis Kelces out of this draft. I mean, I like the possibilities here.
That'd certainly be pretty nice. I must say that Jaden Reed pick really confused me, especially with guys like Tank Dell out of Houston, who's somebody that I really liked, who ended up going to the Texans. So that was kind of cool because staying in Houston. But I love that they picked up two tight ends and got two of the top tight ends with Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft. Two top tight ends in the draft. So that's really good pickups there.
And a deep tight end class too, very talented one. And about the Jaden Reed pick, I didn't really like it that much either. I thought there were better options available, but it does follow the trend that we have of selecting number one guys. This was a number one wide receiver at Michigan State. And then it follows guys like Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, number one at their respective colleges. Devontae Adams was even a number one at Fresno State. So, you know, it at least follows a trend there. And moving on with the fourth round, we selected Auburn defensive tackle Colby Wooden. And then in round 5, we went with a very questionable pick, Penn State quarterback Sean Clifford. And I thought that there was better quarterback options available also, but I guess the Packers liked what they saw of him. He was a 4-year starter at Penn State. He was a tough guy, so they liked that in Green Bay. So I guess they just fit the system, hopefully. And even though he was projected to go undrafted, you know, they must have liked what they saw in him enough to draft him in the 5th round, especially because there was a run on quarterbacks in that 5th round too.
Yeah, if you ask me, it seems like they kind of panicked when the QB started getting taken, but I have to imagine this probably was the guy they were looking at. So I'm not gonna make fun of a team for a reach if you're getting the guy you want.
Yeah, that's true. And then with our second 5th round pick, we got Virginia wide receiver Dontavion Wicks, another number 1 at Virginia, and another tall, lanky guy who fits our offense and goes up and fights for the ball and the vertical threat. And round 6, we got Bowling Green defensive tackle Carl Brooks and Auburn kicker Anders Carlson. Now, for Carl Brooks, I really like this pickup. He's a 3-4 technique defensive end. He fits our defensive system very well, and his comparison in the NFL was Mike Daniels, who was a longtime starter for Green Bay, because he also does not have very good length. He's kind of a shorter guy, but if he can play anything like Mike Daniels, he'll become an all-pro.
Yeah, definitely. I like the Anders Carlson pickup.
Anders Carlson.
Because if I'm not mistaken, it is Daniel Carlson's brother, who is right now a very good kicker for the Las Vegas Raiders and was one time a Minnesota Vikings. But he had a couple of really, really bad games in a row, and Mike Zimmer said, "You're out of here." And then, he just went to Vegas and became one of the best kickers in the league.
And you know who his special teams coach was? Rich Bisaccia, the Packers special teams coach.
So, Daniel Carlson.
So Daniel Carlson, coached by Coach Bisaccia, is now being coached by Coach Bisaccia in Green Bay by his brother. So I really like that he can possibly mold him into a very good kicker.
All I'm saying, Packers, is if he has a couple of really bad games, keep him. Just see how it goes.
Yeah.
Let him ride it out.
Just wait. We let Mason Crosby get away with that 6 field goal missed game. We can go away with a couple of bad games to the rookie. And in the 7th round, we had 4 picks, and I really like all 4 picks. Starting off, we had Kentucky cornerback Carrington Valentine, Central Michigan running back Lou Nichols, Iowa State safety Anthony Johnson, and Charlotte wide receiver Grant DuBose. And I really like Anthony Johnson out of the safety here. He can play the safety or the slot corner. He played all 4 years at Iowa State as a starter. He played for a cornerback and then moved to safety his senior year. If not for that move, he might have been drafted higher. But because he moved to the new position, he fell in the draft. And I think he can be a starter late steal starter for the Packers in this year's draft.
That's something I actually really like to see from a guy making that move from corner to safety. Mm-hmm. Not only because it shows versatility, but because it shows a willingness and a want to win and do what's best for your team. That guy could have kept playing corner and probably gone more in the, 4th, 5th round. But instead, he saw what his team needed. He knew what his team needed of him, and he was willing to go there and give it his all, and he still ends up getting drafted. Mm-hmm. And Callan kind of mentioned this before we started recording, and I agree. When you grab 4 guys in the 7th round, one of those guys are bound to at least be a half-decent rotational player or starter. So maybe it will be him. Maybe it'll be one of the other guys.
Yeah, Carrington Valentine was a big special teams player at Kentucky, filling that special teams need. Central Michigan running back Lou Nichols. He's a big bruising running back and a cold weather running back, kind of matches what Green Bay likes to do in December games. And Grant DuBose, he's another number 1 at Charlotte, and he's another tall, lanky receiver. And I think that he could really fill out this team here if he comes out to be good.
Got to give love those big targets. Mm-hmm. All right, now to jump on to our takeaway, one from each of us, I'm actually going to be keeping it in the NFC North and look at the Detroit Lions, and more specifically, their 1st round. And my big takeaway from the draft and the Detroit Lions specifically is they know who they want, and they're not afraid to go get them. I just said it a second ago that I'm never going to make fun of a team for going and getting a guy they want, even if it is a reach. So I'm not going to make fun of them. I don't agree with how much they reach, but I'm not going to make fun of them. Dan Campbell, somebody in that organization, wanted these 2 guys. They ended up taking Alabama running back Jahmyr Gibbs at 12th overall and Iowa linebacker Jack Campbell at 18th overall. Jahmyr Gibbs probably wasn't supposed to go till the 2nd. Jack Campbell wasn't going to go till late 2nd, early 3rd maybe, but the Lions make these both first-round picks. And these are both really good players. Two guys that I think are going to be really good, just kind of got taken early. But that just shows that they know what they want, and they're willing to build a team around guys and just get them. Not jump around, not have to trade everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
They showed it last year when they moved up from 30 to 10, or to 12 rather, with the Minnesota Vikings to come get Jamison Williams. They know who they want, and they're going to go get them. And that's something I do like to see from a team. So
yeah, it shows
good on
the
Lions.
That the Lions, they showed that they have positional value, you know, for where they are in their draft board. They stuck to their big board, and you know, they said that they were the two of the highest ranked prospects they had remaining on their big board. So that just goes to show that they stick with, you know, what they like. Oh, and then for my draft takeaway, I thought it was shocking that the Houston Texans traded back up after selecting C.J. Stroud. They traded with the Arizona Cardinals to get the number 3 overall pick. And this is where they get the number 2 and the number 3. Now, this is something that happens in Madden when you're able to force trades and you just take the first 5 picks and you draft the top 5, you know, college prospects. And the Houston Texans actually did it. They took the top quarterback, arguably, and arguably the top defensive player, and 2 of the top players in the draft overall, arguably. So, you know, hats off and kudos to them for doing a Madden move and getting the 2nd and 3rd overall pick right back to back.
Yeah, like I just said with the Lions, they know who they wanted, and they were going to go get them, that's for sure. And I think it's going to work out really well for them. I mean, C.J. Stroud was kind of my top quarterback, I'm not going to lie. Just the way that he can put the ball exactly where he wants it to be no matter what is impressive. Will Anderson Jr. was the safest pick in the draft, if we want to be honest, just an overall player. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, they got Tank Dell in the 3rd round, a wide receiver out of Houston, who C.J. Stroud, after getting drafted in the 1st, went to Houston and said, "Get this guy, I want him." And Houston said, okay, and they went and got him. So you love to see a team that's willing to do that for their players. The Lions and Texans are 2 kind of laughing stocks, but now here we sit, talking them up. They both had a pretty good draft in our opinion.
We're looking at Detroit, Houston, Super Bowl?
I'm the master of jumping to conclusion when it comes to Super Bowls. What was it? 2025 Houston Super Bowl? Is that my prediction?
I believe so, yes.
2025 Houston Detroit Super Bowl?
Oh man, that's scary.
That might be what's happening here, but
I don't like it.
We won't know until 2025. So for now, we'll just stick with all the elite, the usual AFC bull crap, NFC bull crap. We'll just stick to that for now. But 2025 is the year of the Lion and the year of the Texans. So thank you so much for watching this episode, our little draft recap. Make sure to stay tuned until next week when we have another video. But until then, don't forget
to eat the W.